Hello, everyone, and greetings from Sofia, Bulgaria, and welcome to our session. My name is Ilhan, and I'm together with my teammate Elena, and we are both part of the UI5 Web Components team. And today we'll present you the latest stuff around the project. So let's move to the agenda for today. First, we'll start with a little time machine for the story of our project. We'll continue with an overview of our official 1.0 release, demonstrate the enterprise qualities and the usage in some of the popular frameworks out there. Then we'll learn how UI5 Web Components are integrated in SAP UI5. We'll share some updates on our efforts to build an ecosystem around the project. And at the end, we'll share what's coming next, and of course, finish with a Q&A session. So let's get started with the story. Here we have a nice time machine that brings us to UI5con 2017. And this is Peter Music, the chief architect of UI5, who rolls out the start of the UI5 Evolution initiative with the goal to modernize all kinds of aspects of UI5. Back then, as part of the initiative, we started researching and looking at the web components standards. This brings us to the next UI5con 2018, when we are introducing our goal to enable the usage of UI5 assets, the rendering layer, the controls, but to other programming models like Angular, React, and Vue. And we decided to enable that with UI5 Web Components, embracing the web standards and innovate. In 2019, the project evolved, got some traction, and we published our release candidate version and had our first stakeholders. In the next year, we extended our component set, significantly added a lot of features, and polished our APIs. But among these topics, we also introduced and worked on the idea to reuse the UI5 Web Components back in SAP UI5. And it's been quite a journey, but it's far from over. So let's back to the present with the key features of UI5 Web Components. So they are really easy to consume, as they are custom HTML elements that can be installed from NPM and added to HTML page. They are future-proof because they're based on web standards, and this will work with any future framework. They're enterprise, implementing the SAP Fiori design, accessibility, and many other product standards. And last but not least, lightweight, bringing small footprint, as they are not an application programming model. But an example says more than words. So let's see one example. Here at the left, we have a standard HTML tags and the default output below. And at the right side, we have very similar markup, but made of UI5 Web Components. Instead of a button in UL, we have UI5 button and UI5 list. But as you can see, you get completely different user experience powered by the SAP Fiori design. And that's the target design system for all SAP products. And you get that without much effort. So let's see a quick demo of that. Jump to the browser. And now I'm going to show you a really blank application with just few files inside. All you need to do is to perform the following steps. You need to declare the dependency to our library, to install it, and then to import the components you need. In this case, we used the button and the dialog component. And finally, the last thing is to use the tags in your HTML and enjoy. You have the button and the dialog ready for action. That's all you need to get started with the web components. And yeah, this is where the time machine has stopped. In the end of last year, in Q4 2021, we released our first stable release, and it was a huge milestone for us. So let's see what 1.0 brought. It came with a lot of new components and features to existing ones, of course, with a brand new theme family, the SAP Horizon theme family. New icons font, stable and future-proof APIs, which means no breaking change for applications that are upgrading. Full-fledged accessibility and enriched documentation. So let's make a quick tour to our renewed landing page of our playground where all the docs and the components can be seen. So in the last couple of months or on our year, we have added more than 10 new components. So I'd like to show the most recent ones, starting with the dynamic site content. I need to enlarge a bit my browser to really show the component. So it's a responsible layout that displays main and secondary content in different proportions and placement. And it's really dynamic because first the secondary content drops below, and if I go further, it's completely hidden. And there are a lot of configuration. You can have a equal 50-50 split and more. So next component is the illustrated message to nicely describe the state of your application. And for example, when you don't have a connection to your backend service, and you can pick from a really rich set of illustrations, and the components also very dynamic as the illustration changes upon resize. Next component in the list is the media gallery component that allows the users to browse through media items like images or even videos. And these thumbnails can be placed to basically all sides of the component. And we have also introduced the menu component, pretty familiar UI widget. It represents a hierarchical structure, and it also supports a lot of level of nesting as a submenus, and also the proper keyboard handling, because everything can be reached with the keyboard and the item can be selected. And worth mentioning is that the menu is completely detached from this button. It can be opened literally by every UI element that fits your design. And one more component that was recently added is the split button, which is really nicely combined with the menu. It allows the user to perform two separate actions, one main and one via the arrow. And there are basically more than 70 components now. So I encourage you to visit our playground and explore them by your own. Now that I'm here, I'm really tempted to also enable our newest theme, the SAP Horizon Morning, which really looks nice. But this feature and the rest of the 1.0 release will be covered with the next slides. And forward to Eli with the enterprise qualities next.
I will continue with the enterprise qualities. And as Ilhan said, we are now with version 1.0. What was the initial aim of the UI5 Web Components is that we wanted to extract everything we gained with SAP UI5 and put it in reusable components. And they not only appear and behave like the classic controls, but they also come with familiar enterprise qualities like accessibility, teaming, and globalization. As the accessibility expert of the team, I would like to start with the accessibility topic. We invested a lot in the past year about it. I first want to promote our accessibility documentation. It is located in our playground. I have also added a link in the presentation. Here you can find all the relevant information regarding accessibility. For example, accessibility in web components in general. Also, we have a description of all of our accessibility features, as well as a full list of our accessibility APIs and many examples for them. And last but not least, here we have a section which describes how you can test and report accessibility issues. The accessibility features could be many things. For example, they could be the keyboard navigation and interaction, also the screen reader support, support for high contrast themes, the color contrast, text resizing, and so on. We will start with keyboard handling. Our components are keyboard enabled. The standard keystrokes, which are as per the row of the elements, are also available, as well as the advanced keyboard handling, which is familiar for you from SAP UI5. I will show you a demo regarding the some advanced keyboard handling. We have here our demo app, and we recently enabled the fast navigation concept. Maybe some of you know about it, but for those who hear it for the first time, it aims to enable fast navigation between different groups in a UI page. So usually, if I want to go, for example, to this list item, which is in my first card, I would have to tap through all the elements in order to reach it. But now, when I have the fast navigation, I could simply use F6 and go to the different groups. And as my list is marked as a fast navigation group, we easily could go to it. Now for the color contrast, we ensure that each color shown on the UI has a good contrast in order to be easily distinguishable and of course fulfill the standard for it. And what is more, we also have the high contrast black and high contrast themes available. Again, we will look at our application. Here you can see the horizon theme, which you had previously showed. You will see that we have this solid focus outline available, and all of our elements are quite visible and readable. And here I can show you quickly the high contrast themes. This is the high contrast black. Here we have a different focus outline. And here is the high contrast white theme. Again, with a different look, but still, in my opinion, looks quite good. And last but not least, we're going to talk about a bit for the screen reader support. It is based on HTML, ARIA, and WCAG standards. We used the existing accessibility specification, the screen reader specification, and all of the knowledge we gained in the years as accessibility experts for SAP UI5. And all of that was adapted in order to fit the custom elements with Shadow DOM specifics. And the result is that when you add the web component in your page, you will receive a native element with a row, an accessible row, and all relevant for the row ARIA attributes. And what is more, you can use all of our accessibility APIs in order to make the component even more accessible. How can you do that? Each application has its own specifics. So you can use those specifics and use some of our APIs in order to give more context to all of our users. Let me show you a demo in our favorite application. Here on the next page, we have a UI5 input, which in our application context is a search field. I'm going to inspect it in order to show you that when we write a UI5 input in our HTML, we will receive a native semantic input element with a placeholder, which is added by the developer, and some additional ARIA attributes. And now I want to add a bit more context. So I choose to use the accessible name, since as an accessibility expert, I know that each input field should have an accessible name. An accessible name is a label. You can think of a label. So it receives a string value. And I'm going to set it to search product. And here comes the interesting part. Here in the Shadow DOM, this string is transferred as an ARIA label to my input. And so now the screen reader users will hear that this input field serves as a search product, a search field. And enough for accessibility, we will continue with the theming. You already saw the Horizon theme. Maybe many of you know that we also have the Quartz themes available. But something else that I want to point out is that our components also work with custom themes. For example, in our application, we have this redfish theme available, and as you can guess, everything turns red, but still looks great. You could enable, you could create and embed a custom theme easily by using the theme designer. We have a great documentation in our playground about it, and you can check it after the session. And for the globalization, it could be simply divided in three: internationalization, localization, and right-to-left support. And again, I will show you a demo. So as you know, apart from the text coming from the application, for example, the list entry values, there are some default text coming from the components themselves. For example, default value state messages, calendar months, and so on. I can show you some of them. Here in our create product dialog, we have this text area, and here you have this default text for the remaining characters. Also in our date picker, we have the calendar months currently in English. So our components detect the browser language and the locale and adapt, so to say, the texts in order to fit it. And what is more, the applications could also manipulate the language by using a configuration or by using JavaScript. The method is called setLanguage. In our application, we have such a functionality. We have a functionality for changing the language in the front end, and internally we're using the setLanguage method. So now if I change the language to Bulgarian and come here in our dialog, you will see that everything is now translated in Bulgarian. And a bit further, if I, for example, change the language to a right-to-left one, everything will not only be translated, but will also be mirrored correctly. And now Ilhan will show you some very similar yet different applications with UI5 Web Components.
Thank you, Ali. So in SAP, there are a lot of LOBs coming with their own application programming models. And they would like to stick to that, but at the same time to incorporate sub Fiori design. And with UI5 Web Component, it's not that difficult. So let's see how it works. Jumping to the browser. And here we have a simple to-do application. It's nothing fancy. You can add, edit, or complete a to-do item. And we implemented this application into 4 frameworks. We have one for React, one for Angular, one for Vue, and recently we implemented the same in Svelte. And while I'm switching these 4 tabs here, you can notice that the only thing that really changes is the title of the application and nothing else. So now I'd like to show you the source code of 2 of the applications. At the left side, we have part of the React application, the to-do item itself. It's a standard React component that produces a small portion of markup. And here is the place that our UI5 Web Components come into play. Wherever you can put a markup diff and spans, you can use our UI5 Web Components. And here we are using the custom list item and a mix of a diff, spans, and a couple of UI5 buttons. And at the right side, we have the same to-do item, but in view application. And here we have a different syntax. Coming from the programming model, we need to define a template, but in the template, we are using the same mark on the same custom list item with the content inside. And as you can see, the result in the browser, it's 4 identical applications, which is really the ultimate goal of the consistency. All right. These were just reference applications, but it's all about creating apps that are resolving real case scenarios. So let's see the UI5 Web Components in production. I'll switch back to the browser for the next demo. And this is a productive employee management system by SuccessFactors, made of UI5 Web Components in React programming model. We are currently at the homepage of the system, providing quick access to multiple sub-applications. So today I would like to show you the Manage Goals, or the Goals Planning app, that every SAP developer is using to define his or her year goals. And now if we inspect the DOM tree, we'll notice and find out that everything is basically UI5 Web Component. This is the top container. And here we have the button at the top and cards and everything else. And if we press the Create Goal button, we can also find many input UI elements that are also web components, like the date picker, the select, and so on. So this one was released with an older UI5 Web Components version before 1.0, and that's why you are seeing the old theming. But SuccessFactors is on their way of adopting our latest UI5 Web Components version. So I'd like to show you the same flow and same apps, but from a test system, again, from SuccessFactors, that are trying to adopt our latest version. It's again the home page, and I can also navigate to the Manage Goals application once again. And let's shift to the development goal. So, okay, so this is the test system for SuccessFactors, and you can see that SAP Horizon is enabled by default. If I press the Create Goal button, we'll see the same form, but with the newer look and feel. And this is a great example of how UI5 Web Components are the building blocks of the SAP design, but also the carriers of the design evolution. Because as you can see, SAP products like this can automatically get the latest design by just upgrading to the latest version. All right, let's continue with the presentation. And now you'll learn how UI5 Web Components are integrated back in UI5.
Thanks, Ilhan. You already heard it from Peter in the keynote, but once again, the UI5 Web Components enablement in UI5 is a fact. What was the idea behind it? As you saw from Ilhan, many of the UI frameworks support the web components natively. This was not the case with SAP UI5 until now. The reason is clear. As you know, the UI5 abstracts the HTML and the CSS layer because the UI5 app developers work with have to work with our UI5 controls. So in order to embed the web components in our framework, we had to create the so-called wrapper controls, and we did it. It is currently available in OpenUI5 and very soon to be enabled in SAP UI5. Here I have added a blog post from Peter explaining in depth about the enablement, but I will give you a deeper look also. In order to do this enablement, we created several libraries. The main library was the SAP UI Web Common. It holds all the base classes, and we also have the SAP UI Web main, which holds all the basic components. You saw the bottom component in the Peter's presentation in the keynote, and we also have the SAP UI Web Fiori, which holds the SAP Fiori specific controls. And let me give you a bit of motivation behind all of the enablement. First, we wanted to make things more reusable. Our aim is to create future controls as web components. This will be the common case. We for most of the future controls, we will firstly create them as web components, and with the enablement, we will put them back in UI5. A great example for this was the media gallery component, which we saw from Ilhan's demo. And also, one other benefit is the performance. As you know, the CSS from SAP controls is controlled on a library level, which is not the case with the components. Each component has its own CSS inside individually. And another benefit is innovation. So we embrace web standards by doing the enablement of our UI5 Web Components in UI5. So you can see all of the controls, the wrapper controls here in our demo kit. I have filtered by web components in order to show you how many examples we have here. And not only that, we also have the API reference for each control containing all of the documentation. And as they're part of our framework now, they also come with familiar features like data binding and flexibility. I will show you a data binding example here. We have our combo box. The first example is with data binding. And if if the code here, we add web main combo box exactly in the same way as the sap.m combo box. As you can see, the binding syntax is also the same, and I'm not lying to you. This is not a sap.m combo box. This is a web main combo box. And just to be sure, I'm going to inspect it. And as you can see, this is a web component. And for the flexibility example, I will choose a more complex control, the panel, but I will switch to Horizon theme because I like it better. Here we have several panels on our page. I will turn on the UI adaptation. I can move around my panels. And also, I would like to change the title, my new title. And now, if I save and exit, everything works correctly. And once again, I will hand over to Ilhan.
Thank you, Eli. So let's continue with the ecosystem. In addition to enhancing the project continuously, we also tried to build an environment around the project in a couple of different aspects to provide even more to our consumers. And I'll start with a project worth checking out, especially if your programming model of choice is React. It's called UI5 Web Components for React, and it's a React wrapper implementation of UI5 Web Components. It provides additional components like charts and more layouts, but more important, it's hiding the complexity of dealing with custom elements in the React framework and let you use our web components in React framework as if they were regular React components. And it's a separate project, it's developed by different teams, we are working very closely and sync our releases. So whenever UI5 Web Components version is out, UI5 Web Components for React version come a few days later. And the project has its own playground, so let's just quickly see it. I'd like to show you one particular component. Web Components for React has a whole dynamic page that you can use for free by just importing the component from the library. So definitely give it a try. Another aspect of building an ecosystem is to give others proper tools to build components on their own. For that, we have the Web Components Tools package, which basically generates a small project structure with build and test setup in place. And even generates a Hello World component. Basically, you can start developing web components reusing our dev setup right away. And to show you how far you can go using exactly these tools, I'll jump to another productive system, the BTP application development. So let's open it. Here, in this system, users can create and manage the life cycle of projects built from the low-code, no-code suite. These are tools like Process Automation, Business Application Studio, AppGyver, and so on. And here at the top, there is a top-level bar called Top-Shell bar, and it's a web component. Let's explore the DOM tree, and you can see the tag named Top-Shell bar. And it's basically responsible to carry out the navigation of the whole system to display the title, logo, and the profile image. But why I'm telling about this web components? Because this is the first custom web component that is released with that has a customer release and used in a productive application. It's developed in a separate project and released separately, and it's based on our UI5 Web Components tooling. So really a success story. And this is really the direction we definitely would like to go further. And we have a few other candidates in the pipeline. So I believe this is the first, but more to come in future. Right, now it's time for our roadmap, or what are future plans. Of course, we will extend our component set with the new components and features. And on the table are menu button, which is actually in progress. And for Q4, we have planned to start developing an advanced table web component. By this, I mean a data table with a virtual scrolling and all the features that you might know from the SAP UI table from SAP UI5. TypeScript support, it was really a thing that is requested from various sources. So I think many of you will benefit from this. And also another topic is the custom elements manifest that is also targeting development experience. Basically, it's a file format to describe our web components or custom elements for even better support within our IDs. Of course, we'll continue evolving with software design, implementing everything in terms of updates of the existing teams or new team family. And UI5 Web Components usage in SAP UI5 is definitely a priority topic for us. So we'll continue strengthening the usage there, and not to forget to have fun. All right, with this, I'd like to conclude our session, and it's time for Q&A. Thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoyed.
All right, yes, I did. I guess the rest of the audience did too. All right, thanks a lot. We do have some questions from the audience virtually. And the first one is, are there ready, or are there templates ready for UI5 Web Components in the Business Application Studio?
Not that I know, at least. It's yeah, definitely a good idea to have, because I know for UI5 controls, there are plenty of templates, but for UI5 Web Components, Not that I know, at least. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if we have. So, up to my knowledge, we don't have templates that are ready to be used.
All right. When Peter was showing the opening keynote, I saw the easy UI5 generator, and there was an option to web components, and they popped up. And he said, "No, we're not there yet." So that's all I know about that topic. But I know there was something there. So stay tuned. But yeah, cool. Are there any special things to consider if you develop a custom UI5 theme and want to use it with the web components?
Not really. So UI5 Web Components are based, the theming of the web components is based on CSS variables. The thing that you need to consider is to have a little knowledge of these sub-design base parameters. So the option one is to use the theme designer to generate a CSS file with all these base parameters. But to my knowledge, you need to be a SAP developer to have access to this theme designer. So if you are outside of SAP, you need to have a little bit of knowledge of these base parameters so that you just include them in your head and they will be applied to our web components. But it's just a standard mechanism of overwriting the CSS variables. You just need to know the CSS variables if you're not using the theme designer. If you have access to the theme designer, it's really easy. The theme designer generates everything necessary.
Cool.
Also, I can add up, you should be careful with the color contrast. So when using custom colors, you should make sure that the color contrast is sufficient.
All right, thanks a lot. Next question. Why would someone need a layout UI like flexible column layout as a web component? Shouldn't this be done via pure CSS, for example, with display grid? Are you planning to replace or mimic all sap.m controls?
Maybe I'll start with the end. No, we don't aim to replicate all the SAP UI5 controls. This is for sure. When it comes to the flexible column layout, it's really complex layout. Actually, the grid won't, just a pure CSS won't be sufficient. That's 100% yeah, like that, because its responsive design cannot be achieved just by CSS. And there's so much configuration, which columns should hide when. So it's not just something simple. And that was the reason to even implement it, because actually we avoid implementing layouts. We have just a couple of layouts, the flexible column layout, the wizard, and the dynamic site content, because they have pretty specific user interaction that cannot be achieved by a simple CSS.
Okay, makes sense, cool. Next question. Isn't enabling different kinds of programming models like React, Angular, Vue, bringing a complexity to UI5 Web Components? And are those bundled separately or all in one?
Actually, all the frameworks are just installing our libraries, and the web components are used as a pure HTML element. So if you forget about UI5 Web Components, you write your markup as I showed in the demo with diffs and spans. And if you want to make your life easier and to be Fiori, you are going to use web components. So it doesn't affect the framework, because the web components are framework agnostic. So they are based on web standards, and it's up to consumers where to use the web components. We are not doing something special so they can work in Angular or React or Vue, because they're supported out of the box.
Cool, thanks a lot. And do we have any questions? Oh yes, I see some raising hands. That's cool. All right.
So,
go ahead.
Hi. I have a question. If you have already an existing Angular application and it's working very fine, is it easy to convert it to Web Components UI?
It depends how good is written the application, but basically you can replace your diffs and spans with web components, and yeah, as they're HTML elements by nature, you can bind for events, you can bind for the attributes the same way, with one note in mind that I know is the two-way data binding support. If you need a two-way data binding support and you heavily rely on that, you need an additional util called origami. Not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is something that comes from the Angular community, and it's specially built for two data binding with custom elements, not just with UI5 Web Components. It's a general thing that custom elements are not recognized as a simple task by Angular, so they built this origami util that makes the two-way data binding build. Apart of that, everything is the same, and yeah, I would say it should be easy, yeah, to convert it.
Thank you.
All right, next question. Yeah, perfect. You guys can throw and catch.
Yeah. Hi. I'm currently working on a small intern project with SAP components, with Web Components Story, and I compare it with SAP UI5. I work currently with Angular, and up until now, my experience was great. So thank you a lot for that. My question is connected to the question that was prior from the audience or from visual audience, and I'm currently implementing flexible column layout with table on the left side and object layout page on the right side. And currently, and based on my understanding from your answer, you are not planning on implementing of object layout page or object page layouts, and that's the order. So what would be your best suggestion based on current existing web components, based on CSS, and maybe based on fundamentals that is also provided by your SAP community? What would be your best suggestion in order to build an object page layout?
Now, if I need to be honest, my suggestion is to hire 2-3 component developers and build a custom web component. I was part of the team creating the object page and maintaining the object page in SAP UI5 before I start working on the web components, and it's really a complex control. Not sure the control is the right word. It's like a floor plan mini app, and it's not ideal for a web component. It's really something that should be built on consumer side or as a custom web component. So it's what suggestion can I give you here? You need to just put a lot of components working together. Basically, I showed you the dynamic page in web components for React wrapper. So you need something similar for Angular. Yeah.
Okay, thank you a lot.
Cool. And thanks for the honesty. That's cool. All right.
So I have also a question. Would it be beneficial to mix web components with standard controls in UI5 for better performance?
To mix, if we're talking about mixing sap.m controls with the SAP UI WebC main controls, no, you won't get any benefit from that, because sap.m will be already loaded with everything, because the loading is on library level currently. The CSS is also on library level, so you won't have any benefit. Benefit you have if you are loading SAP UI WebC main and mix it with a SAP UI layout and other libraries.
Okay.
So it's more beneficial for green grass application that starting just now. This is what I think.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We have 2 more questions actually from the virtual audience, and one is, does SAP provide support for web components in case of issues? So maybe you could elaborate on your way of tracking issues.
If you are talking for the web components project, basically we are tracking our issues in GitHub. It's an open source project. Everyone can file an issue. We don't have SLAs like in SAP UI5. So we don't have these deadlines to answer in 2 or 3 days or something like that. But we are really responsive until now. We're resolving the issues very quickly. And if we are talking about now the components that are wrapped back in SAP UI5, there the same rules are applying. Basically, if you file a ticket for a WebCMain control, yeah, will receive the same support as until now. So with all the SLAs, deadlines, and so on, so on. Yeah.
Cool. One more question from the broadcasting tool. Are the web components stable to be used in UI5? And I guess that's targeting the enablement part. So using the web components in OpenUI5 currently.
Yeah. Let's say at 99%. We kept the experimental flag because we know that we are things that we need to improve, but I think they are ready to be adopted gradually by everyone. But we'll keep improving them. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, one more question. I get the time, the time move here, right? One last question.
IntelliSense support for all frameworks there already with full attributes for all the web components like Vue, React, and all that stuff?
I think what I showed at the end with our roadmap, when we complete the TypeScript support and this component manifest, then I can say that the full support is there. So now it's partial support. When you type some attributes, you cannot expect to autocomplete all the attributes and so on. So yeah, it's partially.
Right. Fantastic. Thanks a lot for that great presentation. Thanks a lot for that fantastic Q&A session.